for a treat because on this film we have the presentation of the Vestal High School's performance of Witness for the Prosecution. At the moment, it's about 5:30 in the afternoon of March the 2nd. The noise you hear behind me is the cast and crew getting ready for the production. That was Jim Popham, who plays Leonard Vole, who ran just in front of me. I'm going to try to turn around now and get a few of the other folks. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, baby.
Hello, Ms. McLean. This was something that I could not resist.
We're greasing up his beds and you're beginning
I'll be back in a few minutes. It's now about 10 minutes of 6. I'm still in the room where the kids are being made up.
The ultimate gag gift I've ever seen. Exactly. Well, somebody gave her and then they also gave her a billboard, the menu billboard from a fast food restaurant. Oh yeah.
Chris?
Yes? Oh, God. You gotta stop doing this.
Shut up. What is this, the aerial view? Hi, Dad. Are you lying? No. Actually.
Yeah, he's got his Sorry for asking for you. I mean, it's 10
I gotta go back to work.
We're back again. It's now about 10 minutes after 6.
I'm serious. That's my second.
Yeah, you guys are right here. Julie! I have the brush. Oh, there's
Lord Nelly came to see it was like first like later on. And then like Lord Nelly like I came and got adopted so we had 3 on 4. Lord Nelly, Dave Shell, Chris Whitehouse.
Oh, yeah, that's the point, buddy. You didn't have it.
Like Jeremy after it wins.
It was Jeremy. No.
So, there we go.
And so it was 3 on 4. We were 3. Harding and Matt beat him. 11 to 8. It was sweet. Everybody find 14 to I'm trying to decide if I should skip jump.
Does that do wonders to your focus, Dad?
Oh, I get Change them all I love it because like whenever I get bored, my friends are just stare off into space. You know, I look up at the roof, driving as fast as I can, so I can go
We're back again, folks. It's about 6:30 now. About an hour before curtain time. Jim, show us your face.
You're acting a little high.
That's why I was going to get that blue. Okay, I'll be careful.
Is it still highlighted?
Looks a lot shorter.
Riders of the storm. Into this house we're born. Into this world we're born. Like a dog with yellow bone, leaving after all alone. Riders of the storm.
That way you can whip it. Try it with a mirror, Joe.
I've never seen it in life.
Oh, that would have made it, Eric.
Come on, come on, come on, come on. You say, can you see that I am quite brave? What was that promise that you made? Why don't you do what she said? What was that promise that you made?
Here we are on the stage before the play. There's the witness, the defendant's box, the dock, table where the witnesses, some of the witnesses sit.
This here is my folder.
That's Mr. Ondike,
This
Yes.
is where I keep all my important
Inspector
documents.
Hearn.
Ah,
Hearn.
ah.
You have to say it with a stuck-up British
I
accent.
did it.
And this here is...
Diametrically opposed observer.
It's Handyman Bro.
Handyman brought eating stale pizza. I don't give a crap.
Place where the barristers sit.
I want this on the video too. I want all of this.
And the witness box.
Like the making. Oh, the making of. You missed it.
And the judge's, whatever you call it, where the stenographer sits and where the clerk of the court sits, and the jury box. I hope you guys can see this, but there are a couple of the people without whom the show would not go on.
Oh, it's you, Charles. No, Sir Wilfrid's in court. Won't be back just yet. Yes, Shuttleworth case. What? With Myers for the prosecution and Vestal trying it. He's been giving judgment for close on 2 hours already. Oh no, not an earthly this evening. We'll pull up. Give you an appointment tomorrow. Oh no, not possibly. I'm expecting mayhem. Nothing even brings good, you know. Any minute now. Well, so long.
Shall I make the tea, Mr. Carter?
It's hardly time yet, Greta.
It is by my watch.
Then your watch must be wrong.
But I said it right by the radio, Mr. Carter.
Then the radio must be wrong.
Oh, not the radio. That couldn't be wrong.
This watch was my father's. It's never gains nor loses. They don't make watches like that nowadays. Really, you're typing, Greta. Always mistakes. You've left out a word.
Oh, well, only one word. Anyone might do that.
The word you've left out is the word not. The omission of it entirely alters the sense.
Oh, does it? That's rather funny when you come to think of it.
It's not in the least funny. Do it again. You may remember I told you last week about the celebrated case of Brighton Portable. A case of a winning trust fund entirely owing to a piece of careless copying by a
Wrong,
clerk.
wife got the money. I remember.
A woman divorced 15 years previously, absolutely contrary to the intention of the testator, as his lordship himself permitted. But the wording had to sound. They couldn't do anything about it.
I think that's rather funny, too.
Council's chambers are no place to be funny in. The law, Greta, is a serious business and should be treated accordingly.
You wouldn't think so to hear some of the jokes judges make.
That type of joke is a prerogative of the bench.
And I'm always reading in the paper about laughter in court.
If that's not caused by one of the judge's remarks, you'll soon find you'll threaten to have the court cleared.
Mean old thing. And do you know what I read in the paper the other day, Mr. Carter? The law's an ass. I'm not being rude. It's a quotation.
A quotation of a facetious nature, not meant to be taken seriously. You can make the tea now, Greta.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Mr. Mayhew, a Mayhew and Briggs will be here shortly. Mr. Leonard Bow is also expected. They may come together or separately.
Leonard Ball? Why, that's the name. It was in the paper.
The tea, Greta!
As he might to give them some use to
Tea!
It was only last night. The tea, Mr. Carter.
Skills. Sensational. Inaccurate. I don't know what the temple is coming to.
Mr. Mayhew, sir.
Have a seat, Mr. Cole. Good afternoon, Carter.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayhew. Some of it shouldn't be long, although you never can tell with Mr. Justice Banter. I'll go straight over to the robing room and tell him you're here with...
With Mr. Leonard Bolt. Thank you, Carter. Sorry disappointment was on such short notice, but in this case, time is rather urgent. Oh, how's the lumbago?
I am defeated when the wind is in the east. Thank you for remembering that, Mr. Mayhew.
Sit down, Mr. Cole.
Thanks, I'd rather walk about. This sort of thing makes you feel a bit jumpy.
Yes, very probably.
Would you care for a cup of tea, Mr. Mayhew? I've just made it.
Oh, boy, thanks. I
No,
don't mind.
thank you.
Sorry. Well, what I mean is, I can't believe this is me this is happening to. I keep thinking, perhaps it's all a bad dream, and I'll wake up presently.
Yes, I suppose one might feel like that.
Well, what I mean is, it all seems so silly.
Silly, Mr. Bull.
Well, yes. I mean, I've always been a friendly sort of chap. I get on with people and all that. I'm not the sort of fellow to do anything violent. But I suppose it will be all right, won't it? I mean, you don't get convicted for things you haven't done in this country, do you?
Our English judicial system is, in my opinion, the finest in the world.
Of course, there was that case of, what was his name? Adolf Beck. I read about it just the other day. He had been in prison for years when they found out it was another chap called Smith. Then they gave him a free pardon. That seems an odd thing to me. To give someone a pardon for something they hadn't even done.
It is a necessary legal,
But it doesn't seem right to me.
and in any case, the important thing is that Beck was set at liberty.
Oh, sure, it was all right for him. But had it been murder, if it was murder now, it would have been too late. He would have been hanged.
There is no need to take a morbid point of view.
Sorry, sir. You see, in a way, I'm rather getting the wind up.
Well, try and keep calm. Sir Wilfred Robards will be here presently. I'm anxious for you to tell your story to him exactly as you told it to me.
Yes, sir.
But in the meantime, I was hoping that we could get some of the pictures more clear. You are, at present, I understand, out of a job?
Yes, but I've got a few pounds set aside. It isn't much, but if you can just see a
Oh,
little...
I'm not thinking of legal fees. It's just the pictures I'm trying to get clear of your background and circumstances. How long have you been unemployed?
About a couple of months.
And what were you doing before that?
I worked in a motor servicing firm. I was a mechanic, that's what I was.
And how long had you worked there?
About 3 months.
Were you discharged?
No, I quit. I had words with the foreman, the proper old bastard. He was a mean sort of chap, always picking on you.
I see. And before that?
I worked in a petrol station, but things got a bit awkward, so I left.
Awkward? In what way?
Well, the boss's daughter. She was only a kid, but well, she took a sort of fancy to me. But there was nothing there shouldn't have been. But the old man got a bit fed up and said I'd better go. He was very nice about it, though, and gave me a good chit. And before that, I was selling egg beaters on commission.
Indeed.
And what a rotten job that was, too. I could have invented a better egg beater myself. You're thinking I'm a bit of a drifter, sir. Suppose it's true in a way, but I'm not really like that. My army service unsettled me a bit, that and being abroad. I was in Germany. It was fine there. I met my wife. She's an actress. Ever since I've come back to this country, I can't seem somehow to settle down properly. I like working
Hello,
outside.
John.
Oh, Wilfred.
Carpet tells you I've caught in Van's a relative half himself. This is...
This is Mr. Leonard Vole.
How do you do, Bob? Won't you sit down? How's the family, John?
Oh, Molly's got a touch of the 24-hour flu, I'm afraid.
Too bad.
Yes, damnable. Did you win your case, Wilfred?
Yes, I'm glad to say.
It always gives me satisfaction to meet Miles, doesn't it?
Gives me satisfaction to meet anyone.
But especially Miles.
Especially Miles. He's such an irritating gentleman. He always seems to bring out the worst in me.
That would appear to be mutual. You irritate him because you hardly ever let him finish a sentence.
He irritates me because of that mannerism of his. It's that... that drives me to destruction. He'll call me robot. Robot. But he's a very able advocate if only he'd remember not to ask leading questions. But he knows damn well he shouldn't. But let's get on to business.
Yes, I brought Mr. Vole here today because I'm anxious for you to hear his story exactly as he told it to me. There is some urgency in this matter, it seems.
My wife thinks I'm going to be arrested. She's much cleverer than I am, so she's probably right.
Arrested for what?
Well, for murder.
It is a case of Miss Emily French. You've seen the reports in the press? Miss French was a maiden lady living home alone but for an elderly housekeeper in her house at Hempstead. On the night of October the 14th, the housekeeper came home at 11 o'clock and found that apparently the place had been broken into and that her mistress had been crushed on the back of the head and killed. Is that right?
That's right. It's quite an ordinary thing to be happening nowadays. And then I read in the paper that the police were anxious to interview Mr. Leonard Vole, who had visited Miss French earlier on the evening in question and thought might be able to provide them with some valuable information. So, of course, I went along to the police station and they asked me a lot of questions.
Did they caution you?
I don't quite know. They said if I would like to make a statement and they'd write it down and it might be used in court. Is that cautioning me?
Oh, well, can't be helped now.
Well, it seemed darn silly to me, so I answered all their questions and I told them everything I could. They were very polite and seemed quite satisfied and all that. But when I went home and told Romaine, that's my wife, she seemed to get the wind up. She thought that maybe they'd gotten the idea that I might have done it. So I thought I ought to get a hold of a solicitor, and that's why I've come to you.
You knew Miss French well?
Well, yes, she was frightfully kind to me. Actually, it got to be a bit of a bore sometimes. She positively fussed over me, but she meant it all very well. And when I read in the paper that she'd been killed, I was awfully upset, because you see, in a way, I'd rather not be fond of her.
Now tell Sir Wilfrid, just as you told me, how it was you came to make Miss French's acquaintance.
It was one day on Oxford Street. I saw an old lady crossing the road, carrying a lot of parcels. She got about halfway and dropped them. Before she could get them back together, she found a bus was almost on top of her. She just made it to the curb safely. Well, I went out into the road and I recovered her parcels. I wiped the mud off and I even tied one up that far apart with some little string. And I generally soothed the old dear down. You know, that sort of thing.
And she was grateful?
Oh, yes. She seemed very grateful. One would have thought I saved her life instead of her parcels.
There was no question of your actually saving her life.
Oh, no, nothing heroic. I never thought I'd see her again.
Cigarette?
No thanks, sir. Never do. And then by an extraordinary coincidence, 2 days later, I found myself sitting behind her in the theater. She looked around and recognized me, and we began to talk. At the end, she asked me to come and see her.
And you went?
Yes, she asked me to name a day specially for her. And, well, I thought it rather churlish to refuse.
And you went to her house at...
Oh, at Hempstead.
Yes, oh. What did you know about Miss French when you first went to the house?
Well, nothing really but what she told me. That she lived alone and hadn't very many friends.
She lived with only a housekeeper?
Yes. She had 8 cats, though. 8 of them. The house was beautifully furnished and all, but it smelled a bit of cat.
Had you reason to believe she was well off?
She talked as though she was.
And you yourself?
Oh, I'm practically stony broken have been for a long time.
Unfortunate.
Yes, it is rather. Oh, you mean people will say I was sucking up to her for her money?
Well, I shouldn't have put it quite like that, but in essence, yes, that is quite possibly what people might say.
It really isn't true, you know. I knew she lived alone, and I thought she was rather lonely. I was sorry for her. I was brought up by an old aunt, my Aunt Betsy, and I like old ladies.
You say old ladies. Do you know what age Miss French was?
Well, I didn't know until I read it in the paper after she had been murdered. She was 56.
56. You may consider that old, Mr. Ball, but I should doubt if Miss French considered herself old.
Well, you can't call her chicken now, can you?
Now, please go on. You went to see Miss French fairly frequently,
Yes, I should say once, twice a week perhaps.
and did you bring your wife with you?
No, I didn't.
Why didn't you?
Well, quite frankly, I don't think it would have gone down very well if I had.
Do you mean with Miss French or with your wife?
With Miss French.
Just go on.
Well, you see, she got rather fond of me.
You mean she fell in love with you?
Oh, no. Good Lord, no. Nothing of that kind. She just sort of pampered me and spoiled me, that sort of thing.
Well, you see, Mr. Ball, I have no doubt that part of the police's case against you, if there is a case against you, which as yet we have no definite reason to suppose, will be why did you, young, good-looking, married, devote so much of your time to an elderly woman with whom you could hardly have very much in common?
Yes, I know they'll say I was after her money. And in a way, perhaps that's true. But only in a way.
Well, at least you're frank, Mr. Ball. Can you explain a little more clearly?
Well, she made no secret of the fact that she was rolling in money. As I've told you, Romaine and I, because that's my wife, are pretty hard up. I'll admit that I did hope that if we got in a really tight place, she'd be able to lend me some money. I'm being honest about it.
You ask her for a loan?
No, things never got that desperate. Of course, I can't see things do look rather bad for me.
Miss French knew you were married,
Oh, yes.
and she never suggested that you should bring your wife to see her?
No, she seemed to take it for granted that my wife and I didn't get on.
Did you deliberately give her that impression?
No, I didn't. Indeed, I didn't. She seemed to, well, assume it. And I thought if I kept dragging Romaine into it, she'd lose interest in me. I wasn't exactly trying to cadge money from her. You see, there's this thing I've invented. A really good idea it is. And if I could have persuaded Miss French to finance that, well, it would have been her money, and it might have brought her in a lot. It's very difficult to explain. But I wasn't sponging on him, so really I wasn't.
Well, what sums of money did you obtain from Miss French at any time?
None at all.
Tell me something about the housekeeper.
Janet Mackenzie, a regular old tyrant Janet was. She fairly bullied poor old Miss French around. She looked after her well and all that. But the poor old dear couldn't call her soul her own when Janet was around. Janet didn't like me at all.
Oh, why didn't she like you?
Oh, jealous I'd expect. I don't think she liked my helping Miss French with her business affairs.
Oh, so you helped Miss French with her business affairs?
Yes, she was quite worried about some of her investments and things, and found it very difficult to fill up forms and that sort of thing. Yes, I helped her quite a lot with things like that.
Now, Mr. Vole, I'm going to ask you a very serious question. This one to which it's absolutely vital I should have a truthful answer. You were in low waters financially. You had the handling of this lady's affairs. Now, did you at any time convert to your own use the securities that you held? Now, wait a minute, Mr. Vole, before you answer. Because you see, there are 2 points. Either we can make a feature of your probity and honesty, or if you swindled the woman in any way, we shall have to take the line that you had no motive for murder, since you already had a profitable source of income. As you can see, there are advantages in either point of view. What I want is the truth. Take your time, if you like, before you answer.
I assure you, Sir Whippet, that I played it dead straight, and you won't find anything to the contrary. Dead straight.
You relieve my mind very much, Mr. Vole. I pay you the compliment of believing you are far too intelligent to lie over such a vital matter. Now then, we come to the evening of October the
14th.
No, 14th. Miss French called on you that evening?
No, as a matter of fact, she didn't. But I come across a new kind of gadget, and I thought she'd like it. So I brought it along when I went up there that evening. It was about 7:45. It was Janet Mackenzie's night out, and I knew she'd be alone, and well, I thought she might be rather lonely.
It was Janet Mackenzie's night out, and you knew this fact?
Yes, I knew Janet always went out on Fridays. That night to go and see her.
Please go on, Mr. Vole.
Well, as I said, I got there about 7:45. Miss French had finished eating her supper, but we had a cup of coffee, and then we played a game of double demon. Miss French was fond of double dinner. And then at 9 o'clock, I said goodbye to her and I went home.
Now, you told me that the housekeeper said she came home that evening earlier than usual.
Yes, the police told me that she'd come home for something she'd forgotten, and that she heard, or says she heard, someone talking to Miss French. Well, whoever it wasn't me.
Can you prove that, Mr. Vowell?
Yes, of course I can. I was at home again with my wife by then. That's what the police kept asking me. Where I was at 9:30. I suppose some nights one might not know where one was. As it happens, I remember quite well that I'd gone straight home to Romaine and hadn't gone out again.
Do you live in a flat?
Yes, we live in a tiny maisonette over a shop behind Euston Station.
Did anybody see you returning to the flat?
I don't suppose so. Why, should they?
It might be an advantage if they had.
But surely you don't think... I mean, if they really think that Miss French were killed at 9:30, my wife's evidence is all I need, isn't it?
And your wife will definitely say that you were at home at that time.
Of course she will.
And you are very fond of your wife. Your wife is very fond of you.
Romaine is absolutely devoted to me. She's the most devoted wife any man could ever have.
I see. So you are happily married.
Oh, couldn't be happier. Romaine is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I'd really like you to know her, Mr. Mayhew.
Yes, Greta?
The evening papers, Wilfred.
Thank you.
Would you care for a cup of tea, sir?
Oh, no, thank you, Greta. Oh, I'm sorry, Paul. Would you care for a cup?
No, thank you, sir.
No, thank you, Greta.
I think it would be advisable for us to have a meeting with your wife.
You mean have a regular round table conference?
I wonder, Mr. Bolt, if you're taking this quite seriously enough.
I am, really. It's just, well, it seems so much like a bad dream that it should be happening to me. Murder. It's something you read about in books and newspapers, but you don't think could ever happen to you or touch you in any way. I suppose that's why I keep trying to make a joke of it. But it isn't a joke, not really.
No, I'm afraid it's not a joke.
But I suppose it will be all right, won't it? I mean, if Miss French were killed at 9:30, and I was at home with Romaine...
Now, how did you go home? By bus or by underground?
I walked. It took me about 25 minutes. It was a fine hotel, a bit windy.
Did you see anyone you knew along the way?
No, but does it matter? I mean,
The
Romaine.
evidence of a devoted wife would not be completely convincing.
Oh, you mean they think Romaine would tell a lie on my account?
It has been known, Mr. Vowell.
I'm sure she would, too. Only in this case, it wouldn't be a lie. It really is so. You do believe me, don't you, sir?
Oh, yes, I believe you, Mr. Vowell, but it's not me you will have to convince. You are aware, are you not, that Miss French left the will leaving you all her money?
Left all the money to me? You're joking.
I'm not joking. It's in tonight's evening paper.
Well, I can hardly believe it.
You had no idea of it.
No, she never said a word.
You're quite sure of that, Mr. Bolt?
Absolutely, sir. I'm very grateful to her. Yet in a way, I rather wish she hadn't. It is rather unfortunate the way things are, isn't it, sir?
It does supply you with a very adequate motive. That is to say, if you knew about it, which, as you say, you didn't. Miss French never talked to you about making a will?
No. She said to Janet once, "You're afraid I shall make my will again." But that had nothing to do with me. It was just a bit of a dust-up between them. Do you really think I'm going to be arrested?
I think you must prepare yourself for that eventuality, Mr. Vaughn.
You'll do the best you can for me, won't you, sir?
Don't worry, my boy. I'll do everything in my power to help you. Don't worry. Just leave everything in my hands.
And you look after Romaine, won't you? She'll be in an awful state. This will be just terrible.
Don't worry, my boy. Don't worry.
And then there's the money side of it, too. I've got a few quid, but it isn't much. Perhaps I ought to have asked you to do anything for me.
I'm sure we shall be able to put up adequate defense. The court provides for these cases.
I can't believe it. I can't believe that I, Leonard Ball, shall be standing in a dock, saying not guilty. People staring at me. I can't see why. They don't think it was a burglary. I mean, apparently the window was forced and smashed open, and things were strewn about the room. So the paper said. I mean, it just seems so much more probable.
The police must have some reason for not thinking it was a robbery.
And it seems to me that all the evidence...
Yes, Carter.
Excuse me, Sir Wilfred. There's two gentlemen here asking to see Mr. Vale.
Please. Oh, no, all right, John. I'll go and talk to them.
My God, is this it?
I'm afraid it may be, my boy. Now, don't lose heart, take it easy. Make no further statement and leave everything to us.
But how did they know I was here?
It seems probable they had a man following you.
Then they really do suspect me.
Sorry to trouble, sir.
This is Mr. Ball.
Is your name Leonard Ball?
Yes, sir.
I'm Detective Inspector Hearn. I have here a warrant for your arrest for the charges of murdering Miss Emily French the night of October 14th last. I must warn you that anything you say may be taken down and used in evidence.
Okay. I'm ready.
Good afternoon, Inspector. My name is Major, and I'm representing Mr. Bull in this case.
Good afternoon, Miss Mayhew. It's quite all right. We'll take them along your charges now. Very seasonable weather we're having just now. Quite a nip of frost last night. We'll be seeing you later, sir. Expect any other inconvenience, Sir Wilfred.
I'm never inconvenienced. I must say, John, that young man is in a worse mess than he seems to think.
He certainly is. How does he strike you?
Extraordinarily naive, yet in some ways quite shrewd. Intelligent, I should say, but he certainly doesn't realize the danger of his position.
You think he did it?
No, I have no idea. On the whole, I should say not. You agree?
I agree.
He seems to have impressed both of us favorably. Can't think why. Never heard a weaker story. God knows what we're going to do with it. The only evidence in his favor seems to be that of his wife, and who's going to believe a wife?
It has been known to happen.
She's a foreigner, too. 9 out of 12 in a jury box believe a foreigner's lying anyway. She'll be emotional and upset and won't understand what the prosecuting counsel says to her. Still, we shall have to interview her. You'll see, she'll have hysterics all over my chambers.
Perhaps you prefer not to accept the verdict.
Who says I won't accept it? Just because I point out that the boy has an absolute culpable story to tell.
Oh, it's a true one.
Must be true. It couldn't be so ridiculous if it wasn't true. But it's all down in black and white, and the whole thing is utterly damning. And yet, when you talk to the boy and he blurts out these damning facts, you realize that the whole thing could have happened just as he said. Oh, damn it, I had the equivalent of an Aunt Betsy myself once. I loved her dearly.
He's got a good personality, I think. Sympathetic.
Yes, that ought to go down well with the jury, but it cuts no ice with the judge, though. He's a simple sort of fool who may get trapped easily in the box. Just not tender, this woman.
Oh, Mrs. Ball
Yes,
is here,
sir.
sir.
Come here. You saw that young man. He's been arrested for murder.
I know, isn't it exciting?
Do you think he did it?
Oh, no, sir, I'm sure he didn't do it.
Why's that?
Far too nice.
That makes 3 of us. Probably 3 credulous fools taken in by a young man with a pleasing personality.
Mrs. Bone.
My dear Mrs. Bull.
Ah, you are Mr. Mayhew.
Yes, and this is Sir Wilfred Robarts, who has agreed to handle your husband's case.
How do you do, Sir Wilfred?
How do you do?
I have just come from your office, Mr. Mayhew. They told me that you were here with my husband.
Quite.
Just as I arrived, I saw the Solana into a car. So recommended me.
Now, my dear Mrs. Ball, you must not upset yourself. Won't you sit down?
Thank you.
Now, as yet, there's nothing to be alarmed about, and you must not give way.
Oh, no. I shall not give way.
Then let me tell you that perhaps you already suspect your husband has just been arrested.
Was he murdered, Miss Evelyn French?
I'm afraid so, yes. But please, dear lady, do not be upset.
So you keep saying that, Sir Wilfred. But I am not upset.
No, I can see you have great fortitude.
So you can call it that as you like.
The great thing is to remain calm, to tackle all this sensibly.
Yes, that suits me very well. But you must not try and hide anything from me, Sir Wilfred. You must not try and spare me. I want to know everything. I want to know the worst.
Splendid. Well, that's the right way to tackle these things. Now, dear lady, we're not going to give away to alarm or despondency. We're going to look at this in a sensible and straightforward manner. Now, Leonard Bull became friendly with Miss French about 6 weeks ago. You were aware of that friendship?
He told me he had rescued an old lady in her parcels one day in the middle of a crowded street. He told me she had asked him to go and see her.
Oh, very natural, I think. And your husband did go and see her?
Yes,
And they became great friends.
evidently.
There was no question of your accompanying your husband on any occasion?
Leonard thought better not.
Yes, he felt it better not. Just between ourselves, why did Leonard think it better not?
He thought Miss French would prefer it that way.
Yes, quite. Well, we can go into that some other time. Now, Mr. Ball became friends with Miss French and did her various little services. She was a lonely old woman with time on her hands, and she found your husband's companionship congenial to her.
Leonard can be very charming.
Yes, I'm sure he can. Now that he felt no doubt that it was a kindly action on his part to go and cheer the old lady up.
I dare say.
And you yourself did not have any objection at all to your husband's friendship with this old lady.
I do not think I objected. No.
And then I can't tell you how much I admire your calm and courage, Mrs. Cole, knowing as I do how devoted you
So
are.
you know how devoted I am to Leonard.
Of course.
But excuse me, I'm a foreigner, and I'm not always familiar with your English terms. But is it not a saying of knowing something with your own knowledge? So you do not know that I am devoted to Leonard with your own knowledge, do you, Sir Wilfrid?
No, that is of course true. But your husband told me.
Leonard told you how devoted I was to him.
Indeed, he spoke of your devotion in the most moving terms.
Men, I often think, are very stupid.
I beg your pardon?
It doesn't matter. Please, go on.
Well, it seems this Miss French was a woman of some considerable wealth. She had no near relations, and like many eccentric elderly ladies, she was fond of making wills. She had made several wills in her lifetime. Shortly after meeting your husband, she made a fresh will. After some small bequest, she left nearly the whole of her fortune to your husband.
Yes,
You knew this fact?
I read it in the papers this evening.
Oh, quite. Before reading it in the paper, you had no idea of the fact? Your husband had no idea of it?
Is that what Leonard says?
Yes. You don't suggest anything different.
No. Oh, no. I do not suggest anything.
Well, it seems to me that Miss French looked upon your husband rather in light of a son, or perhaps a very favorite nephew.
Do you think Miss French looked upon Leonard as a son?
Yes, I think so. Definitely, I think so. I think that can be considered as quite normal, quite natural under the circumstances.
What hypocrites you are in this country.
My dear Mrs. Vole.
I shock you. I'm so sorry.
Of course, you have a continental way of looking at these things. But I assure you, my dear Mrs. Vole, that is not the line to take. It would be most unwise to suggest in any way that Miss French had any feelings for Leonard other than those of a mother, or shall we say an aunt.
Oh, by all means, let us say an aunt.
One has to consider the effect on the jury of all these things, Mrs. Vole.
Yes, I also wish to do that. I have been thinking of that a good deal.
Quite so. We must work together. Now that we come to the evening of October the 14th, that is just over a week ago. You remember that evening, perhaps?
I remember it very well.
Well, Leonard Vole called on Miss French that evening. The housekeeper, Janet Mackenzie, was out. And, well, you see, Leonard Vole played a game of double dealing with Miss French and finally took leave of her about 9 o'clock. He returned home on foot, he tells me, arriving at, 9:25.
9:25.
Yes. At 9:30, the housekeeper, Janet Mackenzie, returned. Upon passing the sitting room door, she heard Miss French's voice in conversation with the man. She assumed that man to be Leonard Vole, and Inspector Hearn tells me that it is this statement of hers which has led to your husband's arrest. Your husband, on the other hand, claims that he has an absolute alibi for that time, since he was at home with you at 9:30. That is so, is it not? He was with you at 9:30?
Is that what Leonard says? That he was with me at 9:30?
Is it true?
But of course.
Perhaps the police have already questioned you on that point.
Yes, they came to see me yesterday evening.
And you said?
I said that Leonard was home with me at 9:30. Did not go out again.
You said. Oh.
That was right, was it not?
What do you mean by that, Mrs. Vole?
That is what Leonard wants me to say, is it not?
It's the truth. You said so just now.
But I have to understand to be sure. If I said yes, it is so, that Leonard was with me at 9:30. Will they acquit him? Will they let him go?
Well, if you are both speaking the truth, they will have to acquit him.
But when I said that to the police, I do not think they believed me.
Well, what makes you think they did not believe you?
Perhaps I did not say it very well.
You know, Mrs. Ball, I do not quite understand your attitude in all of this.
So you don't understand. Well, perhaps it is difficult.
Well, perhaps your husband's position is not quite clear to you.
I have already said that I want to understand just how black the case against my husband is. I have said to the police that Leonard was with me at 9:30, but they do not believe me. But perhaps there is someone who saw him leave his rented house, or who saw him in the street on his way home.
I'm afraid your husband cannot remember anything helpful of that nature.
So it will only be his word and mine. And mine. Thank you. That is what I wanted to know.
Oh, but Mrs. Bull, please don't go. There's a lot more to be discussed.
Not by me.
Why not, Mrs. Ball?
I shall have to swear, shall I not, to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
That is the oath you take.
And suppose it when you say, when did Leonard Bowl return that night? I should say,
Well,
there are so many things I could say.
Mrs. Ball, do you love your husband?
Leonard says I do,
Leonard Bull believes so.
but Leonard is not very clever.
You realize that you cannot by law be called to give testimony damaging to your husband.
How very convenient.
And your husband
He is
can
not
be called...
my husband.
What?
Leonard Bowl is not my husband. He went for a marriage with me in Berlin. He got me out of the Russian zone and brought me to this country. I did not tell him, but I had a husband living in this town.
Leonard Bull got you out of the Russian sector and safely to this country. You should be very grateful to him. Are you?
One can get tired of gratitude.
Has Leonard ever injured you in any way?
Leonard, it hurt me. He first took around my balcony.
And you?
You want to know too much.
Now, Mrs. Bull, I'm afraid you must be quite clear on this. Your statement so far has been somewhat ambiguous. What exactly happened on the night of October the 14th?
Leonard came in at 9:25. He did not go out again. I have given him an alibi. Have I not?
You have. Mrs. Bull,
Dear,
you are a very remarkable woman, Mrs. Bull.
and you are satisfied. I hope.
Damned if I'm satisfied.
Nor I.
That woman, she's up to something, John. What? I don't like it.
She certainly hasn't had hysterics all over the place.
Cool as a cucumber.
What's going to happen when we put her in a witness box?
Oh, God, no.
The prosecution will break it down in a moment, especially if it's mild.
If it's not the Attorney General, it probably will be.
So what's your line of attack?
The usual. Keep interrupting as many objections as possible.
What beats me is that young Leonard Bull is completely convinced of her devotion.
And don't put your trust in that. Any woman can fool a man if she wants to, and if he's in love with her,
He's in love with her, all right, and trusts her completely.
the more fool he. Never trust a woman.
Lady the Queen and the prisoner at the bar whom I shall have in charge, and a true verdict according to the evidence.
I swear by the Almighty God that I will well and truly try with true deliverance make between all sovereign Lady the Queen and the prisoner at the bar whom I shall have in charge a true verdict give according to the evidence.
Leonard Bowl, you are charged with indictment for the view on the 14th day of October in the county of London with Emily Jane French. How say you, Leonard Bowl? Are you guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Members of the jury, the prisoner stands indicted that he, on the 14th day of October, in the county of London, with Emily Jane French. To this indictment he has pleaded not guilty. It is your charge to say, having heard the evidence, whether he be guilty or not.
One moment, Mr. Myers. Members of the jury, the proper time for me to sum up the evidence to you in this instruct you as to the law is after you have heard all the evidence. But, because there's been a considerable amount of publicity about this case in the press, I would just like to say this to you now. By the oath which each of you has just taken, you swore to try the case on the evidence. That means the evidence that you are about to hear and see. It does not mean you're also to consider anything that you heard or read before taking your oath. You must shut out from your minds everything except what will take place in this court. You must not let anything influence you in favor of or against the prisoner. I'm quite sure that each of you will do your duty conscientiously in the way that I have indicated. Yes, Mr. Miles.
May it please you, my lord. Members of the jury, I appear in this case with my learned friend, Mr. Barton, for the prosecution, and my learned friends, Sir Wilfred Rowash and Mr. Brokenmore, appear for the defense. This is a case of murder. The facts are simple, and up to a certain point are not in dispute. You will hear how the prisoner, a young and you may think a not unattractive man, made the acquaintance of Miss Emily French, a woman of 56. How he was treated by her with kindness and even affection. The nature of that affection you will have to decide for yourselves. Dr. Wyatt will tell you that in his opinion, death occurred sometime between 9:30 and 10 on the evening of the 14th of October last. You will hear the evidence of Miss Janet Mackenzie, who was Miss French's faithful and devoted housekeeper. The 14th of October, it was a Friday, was Miss Mackenzie's night out. But on this occasion, she happened to return home for a few minutes at 9:25. She let herself in with her key, and upon going upstairs to her room, she passed the door to the sitting room. She will tell you that in the sitting room she heard the voices of Miss French and that of the prisoner, Leonard Vaux.
That's not true. What I mean?
Janet Mackenzie was surprised, since as far as she knew, Miss French had not expected Leonard Vaux to call that evening. However, she went out again, and when she returned finally at 11 o'clock, she found Miss French murdered, the room in disorder, a window smashed, and the curtains blown wildly. Horror-stricken, Janet Mackenzie immediately rang the police. I should tell you that the prisoner was arrested on the 20th of October. It is a case for the prosecution that Miss Emily Jane French was murdered on the evening of the 14th of October between 9:30 and 10 by a blow from a cosh, and that blow was struck by the prisoner. I will now call Inspector Hurd.
Inspector Hurd!
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Robert Hunt, Detective Inspector, Criminal Investigation Department, New Scotland Yard.
Now, Inspector, on the evening of the 14th of October last, were you on duty when you received an emergency call?
Yes, sir.
What did you do?
With Sergeant Randell, I proceeded to 23 Ashburn Road. As admitted to the house was established the occupant, whom I later ascertained to be Miss Emily French, was dead. She was lying on her face and had received severe injuries to the back of the head. Attempted a maid to force one of the windows with some implement that might have been a chisel. The window was broken, the catch was glass strewn on the floor. I also later found fragments of glass on the ground outside the window.
Is there any particular significance in finding glass both outside and inside the window?
Glass outside the window was not consistent with the window having been forced from the outside.
You mean that if the window had been forced from the inside, there had been an attempt to make it look as though it had been done from the outside?
I object to my learned friend is putting words into the witness's mouth. He really must observe the rules of evidence.
Inspector, you have been engaged on several cases of burglary and housebreaking.
Yes, sir.
And in your experience, the window is forced from the outside. Where is the glass?
On the inside, sir.
In any other case in which the windows have been forced from the outside, have you found glass on the outside, some distance below the ground, perhaps?
No.
No. Will you go on?
A search was made, photographs were taken, the place was fingerprinted.
What fingerprints did you discover?
Those of Miss Emily French, those of Janet Mackenzie, and some which proved to be Leonard, those of the prisoner, Leonard Vaux.
No others?
No others.
And you subsequently had an interview with the prisoner?
Yes, sir. Janet McKenzie was not able to give me his address. The result of a broadcast in the newspaper appeal, Mr. Vole came and saw me.
And on the 20th of October, when arrested, what did the prisoner say?
Replied, okay, I'm ready.
Now, Inspector, you say the room had the appearance of a robbery.
That is just what the inspector did not say. My lord, if your lordship remembers, it was a suggestion made by my learned friend and quite improperly made, to which I objected.
You are quite right, sir. At the same time, I'm not sure the inspector is not entitled to give evidence of any facts which might tend to prove that this or the room was not the work of a person who broke in from the outside for the purpose of robbery.
My lord, may I respectfully agree with what your lordship has said. Facts, yes, but not the mere expression of opinion without even the facts on which it is based.
Perhaps if I phrased my question in this way, my friend would be satisfied. Inspector, could you say from what you saw, whether there had or had not been a bona fide breaking in from the outside?
I must continue my objection. My learned friend is again seeking to obtain an opinion from this witness.
Yes, Mr. Myers, I think you'll have to do a little better than that.
Inspector, did you find anything inconsistent with the breaking in from the outside?
Only the glass, sir.
Nothing else?
No, sir. There's nothing else.
We all seem to have drawn a blank there, Mr. Myers.
Was Miss French wearing jewelry of any value?
A diamond brooch, 2 diamond rings, valued about £900.
And these were left untouched?
Yes, sir.
Was in fact anything taken?
According to Janet McKenzie, nothing was missing.
Inspector, in your experience, if anyone breaks into a house, do they leave without taking anything?
Not unless they're interrupted, sir.
Yes, but in this case it does not seem as if the burglar was interrupted.
No, sir.
Inspector, do you produce a jacket?
Yes, sir.
Is that it?
Yes.
From where did you get it?
I found it at the prisoner's flat sometime after he was arrested. I handed it to Miss Clegg in the lab to test for possible blood stains.
Lastly, Inspector, do you produce the will of Miss French?
I do.
Dated October the 8th?
Yes, sir.
And after certain requests, the residue was left to the prisoner?
That's right, sir.
And what was the net value of that estate?
It'll be, as far as can be ascertained at the moment, about £85,000.
Inspector, you stated that the only fingerprints you found in the room were those of Miss Emily Fletch herself, the housekeeper Janet McKenzie, and the prisoner Leonard Bowen. Now, in your experience, when a burglar breaks in, does he usually leave fingerprints, or does he wear gloves?
He wears gloves.
Invariably.
Almost invariably.
So the absence of fingerprints in a case of robbery would hardly surprise you.
No, sir.
Now, these chisel marks on the window, were they on the inside or the outside of the casement?
On the outside, sir.
And isn't that consistent and only consistent with a breaking in from the outside?
You could have gone out of the house afterwards to have done that, or you could have made those marks from the inside.
From the inside, Inspector. Now, how could you have possibly done that?
There are 2 windows together there, over the casements with a catch adjacent. It would be easy for anyone in the room to open one window, lean out, and force the catch of the other.
That you didn't find any chisel on the premises or at the prisoner's flat?
Yes, sir. Prisoner's flat.
Oh?
But it did not fit the marks on the window.
It was a windy night, was it not, on October the 14th?
I really can't remember, sir.
According to my learned friend, Janet McKenzie has stated that the curtains were blowing about. Perhaps you noticed that fact yourself?
Oh, yes, sir. They did blow about.
Indicating that it was a windy night. I suggested that if a burglar had broken in and swung the window back, that some of the loose glass might have easily fallen down outside the window having been blown back violently by the wind. That is possible, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Crimes of violence, as we all have been unhappily aware, have been much on the increase lately.
Would you been a little above normal, sir?
Let us take the case that some young thugs had broken in, meant to attack Miss French and steal. Is it possible that if one of them crossed her on the head, that they might give way to panic and leave without taking anything, or they might even have been looking for money and would be afraid to touch anything in the nature of jewelry?
I submit that it is impossible for Inspector Hurd to guess at what went on in the minds of some entirely hypothetical young criminals who may not even exist.
The prisoner came forward of his own accord and gave his statement quite willingly.
Yes, sir.
Is it the case that at all times the prisoner has protested his innocence?
Yes, sir.
Inspector, will you kindly examine that knife? That is the knife taken from the kitchen table in the prisoner's flat and was brought to your attention by the prisoner's wife on the occasion of your first interview with her.
To save the time of the court, my lord, may I say that we accept this knife as being in the possession of the prisoner, as shown to the inspector by Mrs. Bow.
That is correct, Inspector?
Yes, sir.
It is what I believe is known as a French vegetable knife.
Oh, I believe so, sir.
Just test the edge of it with your finger. Look carefully. Would you agree that the cutting edge and the point are razor sharp?
Yes, sir.
And if you're cutting, say, ham, carving it, and your hand slipped with this knife, it would be very possible of inflicting a very nasty cut, and one which would bleed profusely.
I object! That is a matter of opinion, and medical opinion at that.
I withdraw the question. I will ask you then, Inspector, if when questioned by you as to blood on the sleeves of his jacket, the prisoner drew your attention to a recently healed scar on his wrist and stated that it had been caused by a household knife while he was slicing ham.
That is what he said.
And you were told the same by the prisoner's wife?
The first time afterwards.
A simple yes or no, please. And you were told the same by the prisoner's wife?
Yes, sir.
Inspector, what first drew your attention to the jacket?
It appeared to have been recently washed.
And you were told this story about an accident with the kitchen knife?
Yes, sir.
And your attention was drawn to a scar on the prisoner's wrist?
Yes, sir.
Now, granted that this knife had made that particular scar, there's nothing to show whether it was an accident or been done deliberately.
Really, my lord, my learned friend is going to answer his own questions. The witness seems to be superfluous.
I withdraw the question. Thank you, Inspector. Call Dr. Wyatt.
Dr. Wyatt?
I swear by the Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Dr. Wyatt?
Yes.
You are a police surgeon attached to the Hampstead Division?
Yes.
Will you kindly tell the jury what you know regarding the death of Miss Emily French?
At 11 p.m. on October 14th, I saw the dead body of the woman who subsequently proved to be Miss French. By close examination of the body, I was of the opinion that death had occurred from a blow to the head, delivered from an object such as a clutch. Death would have been practically instantaneous. From the temperature of the body and other factors involved, I placed the time of death not less than an hour previously, not more than, let's say, an hour and a half. That is to say, between the hours of 9:30 and 10 p.m.
Had Miss French struggled with her adversary at all?
There's no evidence that she had done so. I should say on the contrary, she had been taken quite unprepared.
Now, Doctor, where exactly on the head has this blow been struck? There was only one blow, was there not?
Only one, on the left side of the asterial.
I beg your pardon. Where?
The asterial, the junction of the occipital, parietal, and temple bones.
Oh, yes. And in layman's language, where's that?
Behind the left ear.
Indicating that the blow had been struck by a left-handed person?
It's difficult to say. The blow appeared to have been struck directly from behind because the bruising ran perpendicular. So I should say it's really impossible to say whether it was delivered by a left or right-handed man.
We don't know as yet that it was a man, Inspector. But will you agree upon the position of the blow that, if anything, it is more likely to have been delivered by a left-handed person?
That is possibly so, but I would prefer to say that is uncertain.
Now, at the time this blow had been struck, would blood have been likely to have gotten onto the hand or arm that struck the blow?
Yes, certainly.
And only on that hand or arm?
Probably only on that hand and arm, but it's difficult to be dogmatic.
Quite so, Doctor. Now, from the... would great strength have been needed to strike such a blow?
No, from the position of the wound, no great strength would have been needed.
So it would not necessarily have been a man who struck the blow. A woman could have done so equally well.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Call Janet Mackenzie.
Janet Mackenzie?
Janet Mackenzie!
All the hands, please. I swear by Almighty God, the evidences I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Janet Mackenzie.
Aye, that's my name.
You were the companion housekeeper to the late Miss Emily French.
I was her housekeeper. I have no opinion of companions, poor feckless bodies, afraid to do a bit of honest domestic work.
Quite so, quite so. I meant only that you held in esteem and affection by Miss French, and are on friendly terms together, not quite those of mistress and servant.
20 years I've been with her and looked after her. She knew me, she trusted me, and many's the time I prevented her doing a foolish action.
Miss Mackenzie, would you please address your remarks to the jury?
What sort of a person was Miss French?
She was a warm-hearted body, too warm-hearted at times, I'm thinking. A wee bit impulsive, too. There was times when she'd have no sense at all. She was easily flattered, you see.
When did you first see the prisoner then involved?
Came to the house, I mind, at the end of August.
And how often did he come to the house?
To begin with, once a week, but later it was oftener. 2 and even 3 times he'd come. He'd sit there flattering her, telling her how young she looked and noticing any new clothes she was wearing.
Quite. Now, Miss Mackenzie, will you kindly tell the jury, in your own words, about the events of the 14th of October?
It was a Friday and my night out. I was going round to see some friends of mine in Glenister Road, which is not about 3 minutes walk. I promised to take my friend the pattern of a knitted cardigan that she'd admired, only when I got there, I found I'd left it behind, so after supper I said I'd slip back and get it, as it was a fine night and no distance. I got back to the house at 9:25. I let myself in with my key and went upstairs to my room. As I passed the sitting room door, I heard the prisoner in there, talking to Miss French.
Are you sure it was the voice of the prisoner you heard?
Aye, I know his voice well enough, with him calling so often. An agreeable voice it was, I'll not say it wasn't. Talking and laughing they were, but it was no business of mine, so I went back upstairs to my room and fetched the pattern and came down and went back to my friend.
Now, I want these times very exact. You say that you re-entered the house at 25 minutes past 9.
Aye, it was just after 20 past 9 when I left Glenister Road.
And how do you know that, Miss Mackenzie?
By the clock on my friend's mantelpiece, and I compared it with my watch, and the time was the same.
You say it takes 3 or 4 minutes to get to the house, so that you arrived there 25 minutes past 9 and you were there...
I was there under 10 minutes. It took me a few minutes to search for the pattern as I wasn't sure where I'd left it.
And what did you do next?
I went back to my friend in Glenister Road. She was delighted with the pattern, simply delighted. I stayed there until 20 to 11, and then I said goodnight to them and came home. I went into the sitting room then to see if the mistress wanted anything before she went to bed.
And what did you see?
She was there on the floor, poor body, her head eaten in. And all the drawers of the bureau out on the ground, everything tossed hither and thither, and the broken bowls on the floor, and the curtains flying in the wind.
What did you do?
I rang the police.
Miss Mackenzie, did you really think a burglary had been committed?
Really, my lord, I must protest.
I will not allow that question to be answered, Mr. Myers. It should not be put to the witness.
Let me ask you this, Miss Mackenzie. What did you do after you had telephoned the police?
I searched the house.
What for?
For an intruder.
Did you find one?
I did not, nor any signs of disturbance, save in the sitting room.
How much did you know about the prisoner?
I knew that he needed money.
Did he ask Miss French for money?
He was too clever for that.
Did he help Miss French with her business affairs, her income tax returns, for instance?
Aye, not that there was any need of it.
What do you mean by not any need?
Miss French had a good, clear head for business.
Were you aware, Miss Mackenzie, of the arrangements Miss French had made for the disposal of her money in the event of her death?
She'd make a will as the fancy took her. She was a rich woman and had a lot of money to leave and no near relatives. It must go where it can do the most good, she would say. Once it was to orphans she left it to, and once to an old folks' home, and once to a dispensary for cats and dogs. But it always came to the same in the end. She'd quarrel with the people and come home and tear up the will and make a new one.
Do you know when she made her last will?
She made it on October the 8th. I heard her speaking to Mr. Stokes, the lawyer, saying he was to come tomorrow. She was making a new will. He was there at the time, the prisoner I mean, kind of protesting, saying, no, no. And the mistress said, but I want to, my dear boy, I want to. Remember that day I was nearly run over by a bus? It might happen any time.
You know when your mistress made her will previous to that one?
In the spring it was.
Were you aware, Miss Mackenzie, that Leonard Bow was a married man?
No, indeed. Neither was the mistress.
I object. What Miss French knew or did not know is pure conjecture on Lieutenant Mackenzie's part.
Let me put it this way. You form the opinion that Miss French thought Leonard Bow was a single man. Have you any facts to support that opinion?
There was a book she ordered from the library. There was The Life of Baroness Burnet's Counts and one about Disraeli and his wife. Both books about women who married men years younger than themselves. I knew what she was thinking.
I'm afraid I cannot admit that.
Why?
Members of the jury, it is quite possible for a woman to read The Life of Disraeli without contemplating marriage with a man years younger than herself.
Did the prisoner ever mention a wife?
Never.
Thank you, Mr. King.
I think we all appreciate how very devoted to your mistress you were.
I was.
And you had great influence over her.
Maybe.
In her last will, that is to say the one made last spring, Miss French nearly left you the whole of her fortune. Are you aware of that?
She told me so. Oh, Brooks's charities, she said. Expenses here and expenses there, and the money not going to the object you give it for. I've left it to you, Jonathan. You can do what you think's right and good with it.
That's an expression of great trust on her part. In her present will, I believe, she merely left you an annuity. The principal beneficiary is the prisoner, Leonard Bow.
It would be wicked injustice if he ever touches a penny of that money.
Miss French, you say, had not many friends and acquaintances. Why is that?
She didn't go out much.
And when she struck off his friendship with Leonard Bow, that made you very sore and angry, didn't it?
I did not like seeing my dear lady imposed upon.
But you have admitted that you did not impose upon her. Perhaps what you meant to say was that you did not like to see someone else supplanting you as an influence on Miss French.
She leaned on him a good deal. Far more than was safe, I thought.
Far more than you personally liked.
Of course. I've said so. But it was of her good I was thinking.
So the prisoner had a great influence over Miss French, and she had a great affection for him. Is that right?
That was what it had come to.
So that if he had ever asked her for money, she would almost certainly have given him some, would she not?
I've not said that.
But he never did receive any money from her, did he?
That may not have been for the want of trying.
Returning to the night of October the 14th, you say you heard Miss French and Leonard Bow talking together. What did you hear them say?
I did not hear what they actually said.
You mean you only heard the voices? The murmur of voices?
They were laughing.
You heard a man and a woman's voice and they were laughing, is that right?
Aye.
I suggest that is exactly what you did hear. A man and a woman's voice and laughter. You did not hear what was said. What makes you say that the man's voice was that of Leonard Bow?
I know his voice well enough.
The door was closed, was it not?
Aye, it was closed.
You heard a man and a woman's voice through the closed door, yet you say that the man's voice was that of Leonard Bow. I suggest that is mere prejudice on your part.
It was Leonard Bow.
You passed the door twice, I believe. Once going to your room and once going out.
That's so.
You were no doubt in a hurry to get your pattern and return to your friend.
I was in no particular hurry. I had the whole evening.
Well, what I'm suggesting is that you walked quickly past that door on both occasions.
I was there long enough to hear what I heard.
Oh, come now, Miss Mackenzie. Surely you don't wish to suggest to the jury that you were eavesdropping?
I've better things to do with my time. I was doing no such thing.
Exactly. Now then, you are no doubt registered under the National Health Insurance.
That's so. 4 and 6 pence I have to pay out every week. That's a terrible lot of money for a working woman to pay.
Yes, many people feel that way. Now that you recently applied, I believe, for a national hearing apparatus.
6 months ago I applied for it, and not got it yet.
So the hearing isn't very good. So that if I were to say to you that you cannot possibly recognize a person's voice through a closed door, what do you answer? Can you tell me what I said?
I could not hear anyone as they mumbled.
And yet you did not hear what I said, though I'm only a few feet from you in the open courtroom. And yet you say that through a closed door, two people talking in ordinary conversational tone, you definitely recognized the voice of Leonard Bull as you swept past that door on 2 occasions.
It was him, I tell you, it was him!
What you mean is you wanted it to be him. You have a preconceived notion.
Who else could it have been?
Exactly. Who else could it have? That was the way your mind worked. Now tell me, was Miss French sometimes lonely all by herself in the evening?
No, she was not lonely. She had her books in the library.
She listened to the wireless, perhaps.
Aye, she listened to the wireless.
She was fond of a talk on it, or perhaps of a good play.
Yes, she liked a good play.
Isn't it possible that on that night when you passed the sitting room door, that what you heard was the wireless switched on and a man and woman's voice of laughter? There was a play called Lovers Week on that night.
It was not the wireless.
Oh, why not?
The wireless was the way Peter repaired that to me.
It must have upset you greatly if you really believed the prisoner and Miss French intended to marry.
Naturally, it would upset me. It was a daft thing to do.
For one thing, if she had married him, it is possible, is it not, that she might have persuaded her to dismiss you.
She'd never have done that after all these years.
You never know what anyone will do, do you? Not that they're strongly influenced by anyone.
He would have used his influence. Oh, yes. He would have done his best to make her get rid of me.
Yes, I see. So you see, you feel the prisoner is a very real menace to your present way of life at the time.
He'd have changed everything.
Yes, very upsetting. No wonder you feel so bitterly against him.
My learned friend has been at great pains to extract from you an admission of vindictiveness towards the prisoner.
A painless extraction, quite painless.
Did you really believe your mistress might have married Leonard Bull?
Indeed I did. I just said so.
Yes, indeed you have. In your view, had the prisoner such an influence over Miss French that he could have persuaded her to dismiss you?
I'd like to have seen him try. He'd not just succeeded.
Had the prisoner shown any dislike for you whatsoever?
No, he had his manners.
Just one more question, Miss Mackenzie. You say that you recognized Leonard Bull's voice through a closed door. Will you kindly tell the jury how you knew it was his?
You know a person's voice without hearing exactly what they are saying.
Thank you, Miss Mackenzie.
Good morning.
Call Thomasina Clegg.
Thomasina Clegg!
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Now, you are Thomasina Clegg.
Yes, sir,
You are an assistant in the forensic laboratory at New Scotland Yard.
I am.
Do you recognize that coat?
Yes, it was given to me by Inspector Hearn and tested by me for traces of blood.
Will you tell me your findings?
The coat had been washed, though not properly pressed afterwards. And by certain tests, I am able to say that there are traces of blood on the cup.
Is this blood of any special group or type?
Yes, it is of the type O.
And you were also given a sample of blood to test.
I was given a sample of the blood of Miss Emily French. The blood group was the same type, O.
Miss Clegg, you say there were traces of blood on both cups.
Yes, that's correct.
I suggest there are traces of blood on only one cup, the left one.
Oh yes. I am so sorry. I made a mistake. It was only the left cup.
And it was only the left sleeve that had been washed.
Yes, that is right.
Are you aware that the prisoner told the police that he had cut his wrist and that blood was on the cuff of this coat?
So I understand.
I have here a certificate from the North London Hospital stating that Leonard Bull is a blood donor there. That blood group is O. That is the same blood group, is it not?
Yes.
So the blood might equally well have come from a cut on the prisoner's wrist.
That's
Blood group O is a very common one, is it not?
Oh yes. At least 42% of people are in blood group O.
Call Romaine Harger.
Romaine Harger!
Romaine Harger!
Silence!
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Romaine Harger.
Yes,
You have been living as the wife of the prisoner Leonard Vaux.
yes.
Are you actually his wife?
I went through a whole marriage with him in Berlin. My former husband is still alive, so the marriage is not...
It's not valid.
My lord, I have the most serious objection to this witness giving evidence at all. We have the undeniable fact of marriage between this witness and the prisoner, no proof whatsoever of this so-called previous marriage.
If my learned friend had not abandoned his customary patience and had waited for just one more question, your lordship would have been spared this further interruption. Mrs. Harger, is this a certificate of marriage between yourself and Otto Goethe Harger, dated the 18th of April 1946 in Leipzig?
It is.
I should like to see that certificate. It will be exhibit number 4, I think?
Yes, I believe it will be, my lord.
Sir Wilfrid, I believe this witness is competent to give evidence.
In any event, Mrs. Harger, are you prepared to give evidence against the man you've been calling your husband?
I'm quite willing.
Romaine, what are you doing here? What are you saying?
You must have silence. As your counsel will tell you, Paul, you will very shortly have an opportunity of speaking in your own defense.
Mrs. Harger, will you tell the jury what happened on the evening of the 14th of October?
I was home all the evening.
And Leonard Vaux?
Leonard went out at 7:30.
When did he return?
At 10 minutes past 10.
That's not true. You know it's not true. I came home at 25 minutes past 9. Who's been making you say this? I don't understand. I don't understand.
The prisoner came home, you say, at 10 minutes past 10. What happened next?
He was breathing hard, very excited. He threw off his coat and examined his sleeves. Then he told me to wash the cups. They had blood on them.
Did he speak about the blood?
He said, "Damn it, there's blood on them."
And what did you say?
I said, "What have you done?"
What did the prisoner say to that?
He said, "I've killed her."
That's not true. You know it's not true.
Please control yourself.
Now one word of this is true.
The prisoner said, "I killed her." Did you know to whom he referred?
Yes, I knew. It was the old woman he had been going to see so often.
And what happened next?
He told me that I was to say that he was home with me all that evening. Especially, I was to say that he was home at 9:30. I asked him, "Does the police know you killed her?" And he said, "No, they will take it to further." But anyway, remember that I was home with you at 9:30.
And you were subsequently interrogated by the police?
Yes.
Did they ask you if Leonard Vaux was at home with you at 9:30?
Yes.
And what did you answer to that?
I said that he was.
But you've changed your story now. Why?
Because it is murder. I cannot go lying to save him. I'm grateful to him. Yes. He married me and brought me to this country. What he's asked me to do, always, I've done because I was grateful.
Because you loved him?
No. I never loved him.
Romaine.
I never loved him.
You were grateful to him. He brought you to this country. He asked you to give him an alibi. At first you consented, but then later you felt it was wrong.
Yes, that is exactly.
Why did you feel it was wrong?
When it is murder, I cannot come into court and lie and say that he was with me as if it was done. I cannot do it. I cannot do it.
So, what did you do?
I did not know what to do. I do not know the country. I'm afraid of the police. So I write a letter to my ambassador and say that I wish to tell no more lies. I wish to speak the truth.
That is the truth, is it not? That Leonard Vaux came home at 10 minutes past 10, that he had blood on the sleeves of his coat, and that he had said, "I killed her." That is the truth. That is the truth before God.
That is the truth.
Mrs. Vaux, when the prisoner went through this form of marriage with you, was he aware that your first husband was still alive?
No.
That he acted in good faith?
Yes.
You have shown, and you're very grateful?
Yes.
You have shown your gratitude by coming here and testifying against him?
I have to speak the truth.
Is it the truth?
Yes.
you aware that you are still on your own?
Yes.
I warn you, Mrs. Howard, you care nothing for the prisoner. Be careful on your own accord. The penalty for perjury is heavy.
Really, my lord, I don't know whether these theatrical outbursts are for the benefit of the jury, but I do most respectfully submit that there is nothing to suggest that this witness has spoken anything but the truth.
Mr. Myers, this is a capital charge, and within the bounds of reason, I would like the defense to have every latitude.
Now then, you have stated that there was blood on both cuffs.
Yes.
Both cuffs?
I have told you. That is what Leonard said.
No, you said. He told me to wash the cuffs. They had blood on them.
That is precisely my note, sir.
Now then, what you're saying is that you washed both cuffs.
It is my friend's turn to be inaccurate now, my lord. Nowhere has this witness said that she has washed both cuffs, or even one.
My friend is right. Did you wash the sleeves?
I remember now. It was one sleeve that I washed.
Thank you. Perhaps your memories to other parts of your story is equally untrustworthy. I believe your original story to the police was that the prisoner had cut himself on the wrist and that blood was on the cuff of this coat.
I said it was yes, but it was not true.
Why did you lie?
I said what Leonard told me to say.
Even going so far as to produce the actual knife with which he was slicing the hair?
When he realized there was blood on him, he cut himself to make it seem the blood was his.
I never did.
Please, please. So you admit that your story to the police is all lies? You seem to be a very good liar.
Leonard told me what to say.
The question is whether you were lying then, or whether you are lying now. If you really had been appalled at murder having been committed, you could have easily gone to the police when they first questioned you.
I was afraid of Leonard.
Afraid of Leonard Ball? Afraid of the man whose heart and spirit was just broken? I think the jury will know which of you to believe.
Mrs. Harger, I ask you once more. Is the evidence you have given the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
It is.
My lord, that is the case for the prosecution.
Romaine! Sir!
No, you're not. My lord, members of the jury, I will not submit to you as I might, but there is no case for the prisoner to answer. There is a case of very strong circumstantial evidence. You have heard the police and other expert witnesses. They have given fair, impartial evidence as is their duty. Against them, I have nothing to say. On the other hand, you have heard Janet Mackenzie and the woman who calls herself Romaine Ball. Can you believe that their testimony is not warped? Janet Mackenzie, cut out of her rich mistress's will because her position was usurped, quite unwittingly by this poor unfortunate boy, Romaine Ball, Howard, or whatever she calls herself, who dragged him into marriage whilst concealing from him the fact that she was married already. That woman owes him more than she can ever repay, but she admits no love for him. He has served his purpose. I warn you how you believe her testimony, the testimony of a woman whom, for all we know, has been brought up to believe the pernicious doctrine that lying is a weapon to be used to serve one's own ends. Members of the jury, I call the prisoner, Leonard Ball.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence that I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Now then, we have heard of your friendship with Miss Emily French. How often did you visit her?
Frequently.
Why was that?
Well, she was awfully nice to me, and I got quite fond of her. She was like my Aunt Betsy.
That was an aunt who brought you up?
Yes, she was a dear. Miss French reminded me of her.
You have heard Janet Mackenzie say that Miss French thought you were a single man and that there was some question of marrying you. Let me true that?
No, of course not. That's an absurd idea.
Miss French knew you were a married man?
Yes.
So there's no question of marriage between you?
No. I've told you, she treated me as though she were an indulgent aunt. Almost like a mother.
And in return you did everything for her that you could?
I was very fond of her.
I want you to tell the jury, in your own words, exactly what happened on the night of October the 14th.
Well, I come across a new kind of cat brush, a new thing in that line, and I thought it would please her. So I took it along when I went up that evening. I had nothing else to do.
What time was that?
Just before 8 I got there. I gave her the cat brush. She was pleased. We even tried it out on a little cat, and it was a success. After that, we played some double demon. And Miss French was fond of double demon. And after that, I left.
Yes, but you did not see Janet.
Sir Wilfrid, I don't understand this piece of evidence at all. What is a cat brush?
It's a brush for brushing cats.
No.
It's sort of a brush and comb combined. What brush might be useful? You see, Miss French had cats, 8 of them. The house is beautifully furnished, but it smelled.
Oh, yes.
Sorry. I thought she liked the brush anyway.
Did you see Janet Mackenzie?
No, Miss French let me in herself.
Did you know Janet Mackenzie was out?
I didn't think about it.
What time did you leave?
Just before 9, I walked home.
How long did that take you?
About 25 minutes to half an hour.
So that's that you reached home about...
I reached home at about 25 minutes past 9.
And your wife. I will call her. Your wife was at home then?
Yes, of course she wasn't. She must have gone
Never
mad.
mind that now. Just go on with your story. Did you wash your coat when you got in?
No, of course I didn't.
Who did wash your coat?
Romaine did the next morning. She said I'd got blood on it from the cut on my wrist.
A cut on your wrist?
Yes. Here, you can still see the mark.
When was the first you heard of the murder?
I read about it the next day in the evening paper.
And how did you feel?
I was stunned. I could hardly believe it. I was very upset too. The paper said it was a burglary. I never dreamed of anything else.
What happened next?
I read that the police were very anxious to interview me, so of course I went along to the police station.
You went along to the police station and made a statement?
Yes.
You were not nervous, reluctant to do so?
No. I wanted to help in any way possible.
Did you ever receive any money from Miss French?
No.
Were you aware that she had left the will in your favor?
She said she was ringing up her lawyers and was going to make a new will. I asked her if she'd offer me new wills, and she said, from time to time.
Did you know what the terms of this new will were to be?
I swear I didn't.
Miss French never suggested to you that she might leave you anything at all in her will?
No.
You have heard the testimony that your wife, or the woman whom you considered as your wife, has given in court?
Yes, I heard. I can't understand.
I realize, Mrs. Bull, that you must feel very upset, but I will ask you to put aside all emotion and to answer the question plainly and simply. Is what that witness said true or untrue?
No, of course it wasn't true.
You arrived home at 9:55 and had supper with your wife?
Yes.
Did you go out again?
No.
Are you right or left-handed?
Right-handed.
I'm going to ask you one more question, Mr. Bull. Did you kill Emily French?
No, I did not.
Have you ever tried to get money out of anybody?
No.
How soon in your acquaintance with Miss French did you learn that she was a very wealthy woman?
Well, I didn't know she was rich when I first went to see her.
But having gained that knowledge, you decided to cultivate her acquaintance further?
I suppose that's what it looks like. But I really liked her, you know. Money had nothing to do with it.
So you would have continued to visit her no matter how poor she'd been?
Yes, I would.
You yourself are in poor circumstances.
You know I am.
Kindly answer the question, yes or no?
You must answer the question. Yes or no?
Yes.
What salary do you earn?
Well, as a matter of fact, I haven't got a job. At the moment. Haven't had one for quite some time.
You were recently discharged from your position?
No, I wasn't. I quit.
At the time of your arrest, how much money had you in the bank?
Well, actually, I only had a few pounds. But I was expecting some money in a week or two.
How much?
Not very much.
I put it to you, you were pretty desperate for money.
Not desperate. I felt a bit worried.
You were worried about money, you met a very wealthy woman, and you decided to court her acquaintance assiduously.
You make it sound all twisted. I tell you, I liked her.
We have heard that Miss French used to consult you on her income tax returns.
Yes, you know how those ones are. You can't make head or tail of them.
Or she could. Jane Mackenzie has told us that Miss French was a very good businesswoman, well able to deal with her own affairs.
Well, that's not what she told me. She told me those forms weren't her telling.
In filling out her income tax returns, you no doubt learned the exact amount of her income.
No.
No?
Well, I mean naturally, yes.
Yes, very convenient. How is it, Mr. Vole, that you never brought your wife to see Miss French?
I don't know. It just never seemed to crop up.
You say she knew you were married?
Yes.
Did she never ask you to bring your wife along?
No.
Why not?
I don't know. She didn't like women, I don't think.
She preferred, shall we say, personable young men? And you did not insist on bringing your wife?
No. You see, she knew my wife was a foreigner, and, oh, I don't know. She seemed to think we didn't get on.
That was the impression you gave her?
No, I think it was wishful thinking on her part.
You mean she was infatuated with you?
No, not infatuated. It's like a mother is sometimes to a son.
How?
They don't want to like another girl or get engaged or anything of that kind.
You hoped, didn't you, for some sort of monetary advantage from your friendship with Miss French?
Not in the way you mean.
Not in the way I mean! You seem to know what I mean better than I know myself. In what way, then, did you hope for monetary advantage? I repeat, in what way did you hope for monetary advantage?
You see, there's this thing I've invented. It's a windscreen wiper that works in snow. I was looking for someone to finance that. I was hoping Miss French would. But that's not the only reason I went to see her. I tell you, I liked her.
Yes, we've heard that quite often, how much you liked her.
Well, it's true.
I believe, Mr. Vole, about a week ago, you were seen making inquiries of a travel agency for particulars of foreign cruises.
Supposing I did. It isn't a crime, is it?
No, not at all. Many people go on cruises when they can pay for it. But you couldn't pay for it, could you?
I was hard on. I told you so.
Yet I also believe you were seen in this particular travel agency with a bomb. A strawberry blonde, I understand.
A strawberry blonde, Mr. Myers?
Yes, my lord. They term for a lady with reddish fair hair.
Thought you knew all about it, no? A strawberry blonde. Go on, Mr. Myers.
Well?
Well, my wife isn't a redhead. It was only a bit of fun anyway.
You admit then that you asked for particulars, not of cheap cruises, but of the most expensive and luxurious kinds? How did you expect to pay for such a thing?
I did.
I suggest that you know in a week's time you would be inheriting a very large sum of money from a trusting elderly lady.
I didn't know anything of the kind. I was just feeling fed up, that's all. And there in the window were the posters of the palm trees and coconuts and blue seas. So I went in and I asked. The car gave me a sort of supercilious look. I was a bit shabby, but it riled me. So I decided to put on a bit of an act. And I started asking for the swankiest tours there were. All the deluxe with the cabin on the boat deck.
You really expect the jury to believe that?
No, I don't expect anyone to believe anything. But that's the way it was. It was make-believe and childish Jewish. But it was fun and I enjoyed it.
So it was just a remarkable coincidence that Miss French should be murdered, leaving you her only heir a few days later?
I told you, I didn't kill her.
Your story is that you left Miss French's house 4 minutes to 9, that you walked home, you did not go out again.
Yes.
You have heard the woman Romaine argue rebut that story in court. You have heard her say that she returned home not at 25 minutes past 9, but at 10 minutes past 10.
That's not true,
And that your clothes were bloodstained and that you had said, I killed her.
And that one would have, that is true.
Can you suggest one reason why the woman who has been posing as your wife would say something like that in court?
No, I can't. There's no reason at all. I think she must have gone mad.
You think she must have gone mad? She seemed extremely sane and self-possessed. But insanity is the only reason you can suggest?
I don't understand it. Oh, God, what's happened? What's changed her?
Yes, very effective, I'm sure. But in this court, we deal with the facts. And the fact is that we have only your word for it that you returned home at the time you say you did, and that you did not go out again.
Someone must have seen me in the street or gone into the house.
One would naturally think so. But the only person who did see you says that you returned home at 10 minutes past 10. And that person says you had blood on the sleeves of your coat.
I caught my wrist.
Yes, a very easy thing to do in case questions arise.
Oh, you twist everything I say. You made me sound like a different kind of person from what I really am.
You cut your wrist deliberately.
No, I didn't. I didn't do anything. But you make it all sound as though I did. I can hear it myself.
You came home at 10 minutes past 10.
No, I didn't. I didn't do anything.
You killed Miss Emily French.
I didn't do it. You've got to believe me. You've got to believe me. Oh, God, it's a nightmare. Some awful, evil dream.
Is there no justice? Come out of the stuffy courtroom gasping for fresh air. What do we find? Fog.
Not as thick as the fog we're in with Miss Halger's antics.
Oh, that damned woman. From the first moment I clapped eyes on her, I scented trouble. Oh, far too thoroughly vindictive piece of goods for that simple young fool in the dock. What's her game, John? She's up to something. What is it? Tell me that.
Presumably to get young Lennon Bull convicted for murder.
Why? Look at what he's done for her.
He's probably done too much for her.
And she despises him for it. That's likely enough. Ungrateful beast, women. But why be vindictive? After all, if she was bold with him, all she had to do is walk out. There doesn't seem to be any financial reason for her to remain with him.
I'll brought you your tea, Sir Wilfred, and a cup for Mr. Mayhew, too.
Tea. Strong drink is what we need.
Oh, you know you like your tea, really, sir. How did it go today?
Badly.
Oh, I do hope not, because he didn't do it. I'm sure he didn't do it.
You're still sure he didn't do it? Now, why is that?
Because he's not the sort. He's nice, if you know what I mean. Ever so nice. He'd never go coshing an old lady on the head. And she'll get him off, sir. Won't you?
I'll get him off. God knows how. Never heard a legal story. Only one woman on the jury. Pity. Evidently, the women seem to like him. Can't think why. He's not particularly good looking. Oh well, perhaps he's got something that arouses the maternal instinct. Women want to mother him.
Whereas Miss Halger is not the maternal type.
Yeah. She's the passionate sort. Hot-blooded behind that cool self-control. God, how I'd like to show her up. Show her lies. Show her up for what she really is.
Forgive me, Wilfred, but aren't you letting this become a personal duel between you and her?
Am I? Perhaps I am. But she's an evil woman, John. I'm convinced of that. And a young man's life depends on the outcome of that duel.
I don't think the jury liked her.
No, I don't think they did. For one thing, she's a foreigner. They distrust foreigners. Then she's not married to the fellow. She's more or less admitting to committing bigamy. None of that goes down well, and at the end of it all, she's not sticking to a man when he's down. We don't like that in this country.
That's also good.
Yes, but it's not enough. There's no corroboration of his statement whatsoever. He admits being with his friend. His fingerprints are all over the place. Oh, we haven't as yet been able to find anyone who saw him on the way home, and there's the altogether damning matter of the will. All that travel agency business doesn't help much either. The woman makes a will in his favor, and immediately he goes about inquiring for luxury cruises. He couldn't be more unfortunate.
I agree. His explanation was hardly convincing.
And yet you know, John, my wife does it.
Does what?
Gets travel agencies to make out itineraries for expensive foreign tours. For both of us. She'll work it all out to the last detail and bemoan the fact that this is a connection at Bermuda. She'll say to me that we could save time by flying, but that we wouldn't see anything of the countryside. And what do I think? And I say, arrange it as you like, my dear. It's all the same to me. We both know it's the kind of little game we play. I'll end up the same old thing, staying at home.
Now with my wife, it's houses.
Houses?
Yes, orders to view. Sometimes I think there's hardly a house in England that's been up for sale that she hasn't been over. She'll figure out the rooms, work out any structural alterations that might be necessary, run everything down to the curtains, the covers, and the general color scheme.
Well, the fantasies of our wives aren't evidence. Worse luck. But it certainly helps one to understand why young Ball went asking for cruise literature.
Pipe dreams.
Yes. Here you are, John. Well, I think we've had a certain amount of luck with that Janet Mackenzie.
Showing up her bias, you mean?
That's right, overdoing her prejudice.
Yes, that certainly was a very telling point of yours about her deafness.
Yes, we got her there, but she got her own back over the wireless. Not talking, John?
Oh, not right now, thank you.
John, what really happened that night? Was it robbery with violence after all? The police have to admit that it might have been.
But they really don't think so, and they don't often make a mistake. Head inspector was quite convinced that it was an inside job. That window was tampered with from the inside.
Now, he may have been wrong.
I wonder.
Oh, but just so. What did she hear then? There seems to be two answers to that.
Those answers being?
Well, first, that she made the whole thing up when she saw that the police weren't satisfied about it being a burglary.
Oh, well, surely she wouldn't do a thing like that.
Well, Oh, well, I don't think that rather grim old woman would stick at making up a story like that. What did she hear then, John? Oh, don't tell me it was a burglar chatting amiably with Miss French before she coughed her on the head.
It does seem unlikely.
No, as I said, I don't think she'd stick at making up a story like that, you know? No. I don't think she'd stick at anything.
Good Lord, you don't mean to...
Yes, excuse me, Mr. Wilford. There's a young woman here asking to see Mrs. Bell.
Mental?
Oh, no, Sir Wilford. I can always recognize that type.
What sort of young woman?
A rather common young woman, sir, with a freeway of thought.
What does she want?
She says she knows something that might do the prisoner a bit of good.
Highly unlikely. Bring her in. What do you think, John?
Well, we can't afford to leave any stone unturned.
Yes, that's true. We can't.
The young lady.
Yeah? What's this? Delia? I'm not talking to Delia.
Oh, just a moment. This is Mr. Mayhew. He's an uninvolved solicitor. I'm Sir Wilfrid Robards, counsel for the defense.
So you are, dear. Didn't recognize that your wig. Lovely old look in them wigs. Having a bit of a confab, are you? Well, maybe I can help you if you make it worth my while. No need for names. If I did give you a name, it might be the right one, might it?
As you please. You realize you are in duty bound to come forward and give any evidence which may be in your possession.
Ah, come off it. I didn't say I knew anything, did I? I've got something. That's more to the point.
And what exactly is it you have got, madam?
Ah, I was in court today. I saw that troll give her evidence, so I am mighty about it too. She's a wicked one, a Jezebel. That's what she is.
Oh, yes, but as to this special information you have...
Ah, but what's in it for me? It's valuable what I've got. 100 quid. That's what I want.
I'm afraid we could not countenance anything of that character, but perhaps if you could tell us a little bit more about what it is you have to offer.
Not willing to buy unless you get a butcher's. Is that it?
What?
A butcher's hook. Look,
Oh, yes.
I've got the goods on her, all right. Letters. That's what it is. Letters.
Letters written by Romaine Bones, the prisoner.
To the prisoner? Don't make me laugh. Poor rotten prisoner. He's been taken by her, all right. I've got something to sell, dear. In case you forget.
Well, perhaps if you could let us see these letters, we'd be able to advise you as to how pertinent they are.
Putting it in your own language, are you? Well, as I said, I didn't expect you to buy without seeing. But fair is fair. If these letters will do the trick, if they'll get that boy off and put that foreign bitch where she belongs, then it's 100 quid for me, right?
Well, if these letters will prove useful in the defense, to aid in your expenses in coming here, I'd be prepared to offer you £10.
Right, criminals like this, take the game.
These letters prove to help my client's innocence. £20 would I think not be an unreasonable sum for your expenses.
50 quid, and it's a bargain. That's if you're satisfied with the letters.
£20.
All right, blast you. Here's the letters. Quite a packet of them there are. The top one's the one that'll do the trick.
Just a moment. I suppose that is her handwriting?
It's her handwriting, all right. She wrote them. It's all fair and square.
We have only your word for that.
Oh, but one moment. I've got a letter from Miss Halber, not here, but at my office.
Well, madam, it looks as though we'll have to trust you for the moment. My God, it's incredible. Quite incredible. How did you get a hold of these?
That's big daddy.
What have you got against Romaine Bowen?
See that?
Did she do that to you?
Not her. The chap I was getting with him, a steady I was too. He was a bit younger than me, but he was fond of me, and I loved him. Then she came along and got him away from me. She took a fancy to him and started to see him on the sly. Then one day, he cleared out. But I knew where he'd gone. I went after him and found them together. I told him what I thought of her, and he set in on me. And he was one of them razor gangs, he was. He cut my face up proper. There, he says, no man will ever look at you now.
Did you go to the police?
Me? Not likely. Besides, it wasn't his fault. Not really. It was hers. All hers. Getting him away from me. Turning him against me. But I waited my time. I followed her back and watched her. I know some of the things she's been up to. I know where the bloke lives that she's been going to see on the sly sometimes. That's how I get out of them letters. So now you know the whole story, mister. Want to kiss me? I don't blame you.
I'm sorry. Deeply sorry. Can't you find a job? Well, let's make it another £5.
Holding out on me, were ya? We only go up another 5 quid. Those letters are the goods, aren't they?
They will, I think, prove very useful. Now, John, have the butchers at that top one. We shall have to have this man's surname and address.
We can have a handwriting expert on it if necessary.
Yes, you're right there.
He can come and give tests. Hello, where's she gone? She mustn't leave without giving us the particulars.
Carter! Carter!
Yes, Sir Wilfrid.
Carter, where did that young woman go?
She went straight out, sir.
Well, you shouldn't have let her go. Send Greta after her.
Very good, Sir Wilfrid.
She's gone?
Yes. Damn! We shall have to have this man's surname and address.
We won't get it. She's planned things out too carefully. She wouldn't give us her name. She slipped out like an eel when she saw we were occupied with the letters. She daren't risk having to appear in court. You saw what he did to her last time.
But she'd have protection.
Would she? For how long? He'd get her in the end, or one of his friends would. She doesn't want to bring the man into it. It's Romaine Halber she's after.
What a beauty our Romaine is. But we've got something to go on at last. evidence is such that I am taking it upon myself to ask your lordship's permission to have the last witness for the prosecution, Romain Halger, recalled.
When exactly, Sir Wilfrid, did this piece of evidence come to your knowledge?
It was after court was adjourned last.
My lord, I must object to my friend's request. The case for the prosecution is closed.
Mr. Myers, this is a... I had not intended to rule on this question without first observing the customary formality of inviting your observations on the matter. Proceed, Sir Wilfrid.
My lord, when evidence vital to the prisoner comes into the hands of his legal advisers at any time before the jury have returned their verdict, I contend that such evidence is not only admissible, but desirable. Happily, there is clear authority to support my proposition, to be found in the case of the King against Stilton, reported in 1926. Appeal cases, page 463.
No need to trouble to cite the authority. I'm quite familiar with the case. I should like to hear from the prosecution.
In my respectful submission, my lord, may I say that the course my friend proposes is, save in exceptional circumstances, quite unprecedented. And what is this piece of evidence of which Sir Wilfrid speaks?
Letters, my lord. Letters written by Romain Halger.
I should like to see these letters.
My good friend was good enough to tell me only as we came into court that he intended to make this submission. So I've had no time to examine the authorities. But I seem to remember the case in 1930, I believe, the King against Potter.
No, Mr. Myers, King against Potter. And it was reported in 1931. I appeared for the prosecution.
And if my memory serves me well, your lordship's similar objection was sustained.
Your memory for once serves you ill, Mr. Myers. My objection was overruled by a Mr. Justice Swinny, as yours is now, by me.
Call Romain Halger.
Romain Halger!
Romain Halger!
These letters are authentic. It raises very serious issues.
Mrs. Halger, you realize that you are still on oath?
Yes.
Romain Halger, you will report to this witness box so that Sir Wilfrid may ask you further questions.
Mrs. Halger, do you know a certain man whose Christian name is Max?
I don't know what you mean.
And yet it's a very simple question. Do you or do you not know a man called Max?
Certainly not.
Yet I think it's a fairly common name or contraction of a Christian name in your country. Are you saying that you have never known anyone by that name?
Oh, in Germany, perhaps. I do not remember. It was a long time ago.
Well, I should not ask you to throw your mind back such a long way as that. A few weeks will suffice. Shall we say the 17th of October last?
What have you got there?
A letter?
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm talking about a letter. A letter written on the 17th of October. You remember that date, perhaps?
Not particularly. Why?
I suggest that on that date you wrote a letter, a certain letter to a man called Max.
I did nothing of the kind. These are lies that you are telling. I don't know what you mean.
This letter was one in a series written over a considerable period of time to the same man.
Lies! Oh, lies!
It would seem you're on intimate terms with this man.
How dare you say a thing like that? It isn't true.
The prisoner in his own interest will remain silent.
I'm not interested in the general correspondence, but only in one particular letter. My beloved Max, an extraordinary thing has happened. I believe all our difficulties may be ended.
It's a lie! I never wrote that. How did you get hold of that letter? Who gave it to you?
How the letter came into my possession is irrelevant.
You stole it. You are thief as well as a lie. Or did some woman give it to you? Yes, I am right. Am I not?
Kindly confine yourself to answering counsel's questions.
But I will not listen.
Proceed, Sir Wilfrid.
So far, you've only heard the opening phrases of the letter. Am I to understand that you definitely denied writing it?
Of course I never wrote it. It's a forgery. It is an outrage that I should be forced to listen to a pack of lies.
I suggest it is you who lied. You lied flagrantly, persistently, and upon oath. And the reason why you have lied is made clear right here in this letter, written down by you in black and white.
You are crazy. Why should I write down a lot of nonsense?
up to you before you took freedom, and planning to take that way, the fact that an innocent man would be sent to his death meant nothing to you. It even included that final deadly touch of how you yourself managed to accidentally wound the prisoner with the hand knife.
I never wrote that. I wrote that he did it himself.
So, you know what's in the letter even before I have read it?
Damn you! Damn you! Damn you!
Leave her alone! Don't bully her!
Let me get out of here! Let me go!
Usher, give the witness a chair. Sir Wilfred, will you now read the letter aloud so that the jury can hear it?
My beloved Max, an extraordinary thing has happened. I believe all our difficulties may be ended. I can come to you without any fear of endangering the valuable work you are doing in this country. The old lady I told you about has been murdered, and I think Leonard is suspected. He was there earlier that night, and his fingerprints will be all over the place. 9:30 seems to be the time. Leonard was home by then, but his alibi depends on me. On me. Supposing I say he came home much later and that he had blood on his clothes. He did have blood on his sleeve because he cut his wrist at supper. So you see, would all fit in. I can even say he told me he killed her. Oh, Max, beloved, tell me I can go ahead. It would be so wonderful to be free from playing the part of a loving, grateful wife. I know the cause and the party comes first, but if Leonard was convicted of murder, I can come to you safely and we can be together for always. Your adoring Romaine.
Mrs. Harlow, will you go back into the witness box? You have heard the letter read. What have you to say?
Nothing.
Romaine, tell him you didn't write the letter. I know you didn't write it.
Of course I wrote it.
That, my lord, concludes the case for the defense.
Sir Wilfred, have you any evidence as to whom these letters are addressed?
They came to my possession anonymously last night, and as yet there has been no time to ascertain any further facts. It would seem, though, that this man has come to this country illegally as he engaged on some subversive activities.
You shall never find out who he is. Never. I don't care what you do to me. You shall never know.
Do you wish to re-examine Mr. Myers?
Really, my lord, I find it somewhat difficult in view of these startling new circumstances. Mrs. Harvey, you are, I think, of a highly nervous temperament. Being a foreigner, you may not quite realize the responsibilities that lie upon you when you take the oath in an English court of law. If you have been forced into saying something that is not true, or if you have been intimidated into writing a letter under some spirit of make-believe, do not hesitate to say so now.
Must you go on torturing me like this? I wrote the letter. Now let me go.
My lord, I submit that this witness is in such an extreme state of agitation that she hardly knows what she's saying or admitting to.
You may remember, Mr. Myers, that Sir Wilfred cautioned the witness at the time of her previous statement and impressed upon her the sacred nature of the oath that she had taken. Mrs. Harrigan, I wish to warn you that this is not the end of the matter. In this country, you cannot commit perjury without being brought to account for it. And I may tell you, I've no doubt that proceedings for perjury will shortly be taken against you. The penalty for perjury can be quite severe. You may stand down.
Silence!
Sir Wilfred?
Members of the jury, the truth is clearly evident. It speaks for itself. No words of mine, I'm sure, can add to the impression made upon you by the straightforward story which the prisoner has told, nor by the very wicked attempt to incriminate him, evidence of which you have just witnessed tonight in this courtroom.
Both stand up.
Are you all agreed upon your verdict?
We are.
Do you find the prisoner, Leonard Bowl, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, my lord.
Oh, thank goodness.
Silence!
Leonard Ball, you've been found not guilty of the murder of Emily French. You are hereby discharged and free to leave the court.
All persons who have anything further to do, if my Lady the Queen's Justices of Oyer and Turner, and General Jail Delivery for the jurisdiction of Central Criminal Court, may depart hence and give their attendance tomorrow morning at 10:30 o'clock. God save the Queen.
Congratulations, my boy.
I can't thank you enough. Thank you, sir. You've got me out of a very nasty mess.
Nasty mess. Do you hear that, John? Why, your troubles are over now, my boy.
Yes, I suppose they are.
Why, if we hadn't been able to break that woman down like
You have to go for her the way you did? It was terrible the way she went to pieces.
Now look here. You're not the first young man I've known who's been so crazy over a woman who's been blinded to what she's really like. That woman did her level best to put a rope around your neck.
Don't you forget it.
Yes, but why? I can't see why. She always seemed so devoted to me. I could have sworn she loved me. And all the while she was going with that other fella. It's unbelievable. There's something I don't understand.
Just 2 or 3 minutes more, sir. We'll slip you onto a car by the side entrance.
Is there still a crowd?
Afraid so. You better wait here now. The crowd's in a nasty room. I'd like to disperse before you try and leave.
Thank you.
No, you don't.
As you're trying to protect Leonard from me. Really, there's no need.
You've done enough harm.
May I even congratulate Leonard on being free?
No thanks to you.
And rich.
Rich?
Yes, I think, Mr. Bull, you're going to find you're about to inherit a great deal of money.
Money doesn't seem to mean so much to me after what I've been through. I mean, I can
Leonard,
understand.
I can explain.
No.
Tell me, do the words you just said means that I shall go to prison?
You will quite certainly be charged with perjury and tried for it. You will probably go to prison.
I'm sure that everything will come right. Remain, don't worry.
Mr. Bull, will you never see sense? Now, it's practicalities. As a matter of proof.
It may interest you to know, when I first met you, I decided then and there to beat you at your little game, and by God, I've done it. I got him off in spite of you.
In spite of me?
You don't deny, do you, that you did your best to hang him?
Would they have believed me if I had said Leonard was with me all that night? Did not go out? Would they?
Why not?
They would have said to themselves, this woman loves this man. She would say or do anything for him. They would have had sympathy with me, yes. But they would not have believed me.
If you'd been speaking the truth, they would have.
I wonder. I did not want their sympathy. I did not want them. I wanted them to mistrust me, to dislike me, to believe that I was a liar. And then, when my lies were broken down, then they believed me. So now you know the whole story, mister. Want to kiss me?
My God.
Yes. The woman with the letters. I wrote those letters. I brought them to you. I was that woman. It was not you that won freedom for Leonard. It was I. And because of it, I shall go to prison. But in the end, Leonard and I shall be together, happy, loving each other.
But my dear, couldn't you trust me? We believe, you know, that our British system of justice upholds the truth. We've got him off.
But I couldn't risk it. You see, you thought he was innocent.
You knew he was innocent. I understand.
You do not understand at all. I knew he was guilty.
But aren't you afraid?
Afraid?
Of linking your life with the murderers?
You do not understand. We love each other.
Mrs. Ball, when I first met you, I said you were a very remarkable woman. I see no reason to change my opinion.
It's no good going in there, miss. It's all over.
Man, darling, you're free. Isn't it wonderful? They've been trying to keep me out. Darling, it's been awful.
Leonard, who is this girl?
I'm Len's girl.
I know all about you. You're not his wife, never have been. You're years older than him. You just got hold of him, and you've done your best to hang him. But that's all over now. We'll go abroad, like you said, on one of your cruises, to all those grand places. We'll have a wonderful time.
Is this true? Is she a girl, Leonard?
Yes, she is.
After everything I've done for you, what can she do to think of her as that?
She's 15 years younger than you are. I've got the money. I've been acquitted, and I can't be tried again. So don't go shooting your mouth off, or you'll just get yourself hanged as an accessory after the fact.
No. That shall not happen. I shall not be tried as an accessory after the fact. I shall not be tried for perjury. I shall be tried for murder. Murder of the only man I ever loved. My lord.
Dad, but give him a round of applause.
Good trip. See you later. Sounds like that was a good idea. Thank you for coming.
I know.
Yesterday I called you.
Like, we're already like, oh no.
That's dedication.
Good job, Joel.
Thank you.
You know, it's a good question. But the movie was the play was. No, I'm sorry. So much authority.
Don't you want her? Sweet.
Oh, we're on film. Oh my God.
Turn that damn thing off.
No pictures. Hey, no pictures, please. No pictures.
What?
Silence.
You think you're lying. I'm not getting my girl.
Do you think last night
Gotta be the drink.
What did you do?
Show your mom.
Silence.
Right in the middle. Right in the middle when she's about to murder.
No, I saw her. She loved it. She was like, oh wow, it's great.
I will not be tried for Paul Rush. It's like that. Doing the sex? You hear? Yeah.
Can you guys?
Huh? I don't know.
That's all.
Seriously, you're going? So we're in orange and yellow?
You're quite fun. I'll tell you how funny you are.
Is that why you're wearing lavender and shit green? Now?
She said that girl said they would have killed
No problem.
Which side? Now it's not parts. At least.
My right side.
So Wendy, what?
Watch us grab your thing. Thank you.
Now, in the back?
And then take your time. Did you forget? Probably think about it.
Various sundries.
Turn that thing off.
We do have a normal conversation.
Not my face.
Whatever, what's supposed to do with my head? I don't know if that's you or someone else. What's with this cast party thing?
It was due last Thursday in English. Oh, well.
you've always had problems with like getting books in on time, even though you read an incredible amount.
Yeah, well, I don't know, when something signs for English, unless it happens to be really good, like when it signed Brave New World, that was one of the books that it was introduced to by an English course that I actually really got into.
I've liked what I've read, but I've been very picky. Charlie, Fire Crash not
Story.
It should have stayed a short story when it was a short story.
Yeah, I agree.
Because when it started out, I thought it was incredibly impressive, and then it just got...
And then the teacher
I've been like reading up and noticing my collection of writing style. Well, people read and Utopia, I didn't read one Utopia.
Hey, Raj, is your stuff?
Lisa.
Mother's gonna make baby. We just sang the second one.
I have the brown. You have Conway, but someone stole it.
I want the highlights.
Wait up until you get it, or Mom will always find out where you've been.
This is the first one. No, you said the first one is yeah, we mixed them up.
Yeah, that happens a lot. You know anything else?
I think it's better than you know that. Way better. No, I
Still, great, and I
Wendy?
I can't get this one little line, and it's pissing me off.
Yeah, I know she's always wrong because he told me to. Well, I mean, so you see this.
Joel.
Yes, I can see that. Why does everything have a wooden leg?
Oh, I've only 22
Hold on. So why does this pig have a wooden leg? Well, you don't understand. This is no ordinary pig. This is a very, very special case. My son was out skating on our pond, but the ice was too thick, and the ice broke. My son, he fell in the water, and he's going to freeze to death and get hypothermia, and that pig skated out there, grabbed him, pulled him to safety, and saved his life. So you see, this is no ordinary pig. This is very, very special.
But hey, you said this wouldn't hurt, but it
yes,
does.
but why does the pig have a wooden leg? And the pharmacist, well, you see, this is no ordinary. This is very, very special. My daughter was out playing in the field, and I was cropping it with our cropping machine, and well, harvester, that is, and she fell down, and I didn't see her, and I almost harvested her. It was horrible, but the pig saw her, and he ran out, and he grabbed her by the foot, and he pulled her to safety, and I harvested her, and then I saw her, and I thought, oh my God, so you see, this is no ordinary. Very, very special. Yes, but why does it have a wooden leg? Very, very special. A pig like this is going to eat all at once.
Oh, God! I can't believe I listened to that!
Wait, it wasn't that
Well, no, I stepped on a little clip thing. Yeah, well, I saw you there. Well, sometimes.
A pig like this is going to eat all at once.
Joel, that's really bad.
Okay, great, Joel. So when you found that picture, did you find a picture of the
I know of a real pig called Bacon,
Did you ever
or
see
New.
that?
You might as well beat around the bush.
Some patient, my mother told her the exact same joke by her picture of the train. And so it's in her basement.
Just get back to work.
It never works for me because I don't know. I knew it. I knew it.
Okay, I guess I can base my hand in
Yesterday it turned out
Well, if you really want to do it, madcap. If you're gonna, you beat madcap. Yeah. Sean does anything, absolutely anything, and he can't die.
You can't kill him.
I know that.
You would have to completely.
What's the purpose of having superhero?
No, just put them in. You have to cut off his arms,
Who
cut off
cares
his legs,
about
cut off his head.
Superman? You
Place
have
up
all
his
these
torso,
gods
put it on
floating
his
around. Why don't they just put their finger in every time? Thor.
I believe Thor could give Superman a lot for his money.
You got it. Superman's trash.
Alright, we're all taking a breather here. Well deserved.
You messed up here.
The mirror.
We were just talking about how I didn't want to get up. Take a breather. Yeah, well, Jimmy can put her on top. They can see the turn around there. And stop getting up there.
Inspirational.
And stop. Just put it on the desk, okay?
Jim. Hello.
I hope that worked.
How are they rated?
So where?
Mom, please find me the highlight green.